Hello? Okay. Notong Shana Bohorkas Yaka. Non Payom Kuicham Palanai. My name is Shana Bohorkas, and I am Luceño from Paula. So I am here this evening. I am a youth facilitator with the Palma Uima Band of Indians. I work with our high school students, 9th through our incoming freshmen and college students. I'm here regarding denying our tribal education centers access to school campuses. It is stated in the district's LCAP, some of the ways to measure engagement in learning and feeling safe at school is to review suspension data and chronic absenteeism. The numbers in both categories are astronomically high for our Native American students, which is a clear indication that they are not feeling engaged. While the district makes statements and claims in the document to focus on building trust with our Native American community and partnerships with parents of Native American families to understand deeper the concerns and the concerns with absenteeism to help us brainstorm how we might be able to address and potentially overcome systemic barriers. This is listed in your LCAP. These are your words. You have completely rejected and removed our presence from all of the school campuses. Our students have become accustomed and encouraged by seeing mentors and advocates from their local education centers at their schools. Collectively, we facilitated and assisted in Native clubs at the middle school and the high school as well, a variety of events. And at each of the school sites, we work with principals to set up space for our students to check in with Ed Center staff and work directly with teachers on site to assist in educational and emotional success for our students. The decision to deny tribal education staff access to our children is that of the district and the school board. It's not a county or state department imposed decision. I would ask you to weigh the benefits versus the risk of having guests, of having us on your campus. Clearly, we allow sports functions to continue. We allow guests, vaccinated and not, to come onto our campuses that come throughout the county, which potentially exposes students, teachers, coaches, administration who attend these events. I ask that you follow through with the partnership and allow our tribal education sites access to continue to support and encourage the educational and emotional success of our Native American students for the vision of all students learning and thriving to become a reality. Thank you.
Good evening, my name is Anthony. I'm a community member and former student of the school district. I would like to comment or just further comment on the issue of current prevention of Indian education centers from having on-campus access to support Native students. And as I've seen the devastating effects of depression, anxiety, and violence due to lack of support and suppression of academic brilliance in the youth, the education centers are very critical in helping keep culture alive in a community that is fighting erasure. For some students, school is the only place they can access this because going after school may not be an option, may be too far for parents to drive, or may not know about it at all. Having the education centers on campus as another support is extremely important and allows the youth to, or socially and culturally allows for things like mentorship and empowerment to occur in the youth. As a school board, your goal is to help make sure all students succeed, but if certain groups are lagging behind and not receiving the support they need, they are bound to struggle. It is your responsibility to make sure those students are getting what they need. And right now, under the circumstances, they need their mentors and their community members more than ever. As a youth, I know how important it is to give and receive mentorship. Please let the Ed Centers back on campus immediately. Thank you.
Good evening, Superintendent, members of the board and staff. My name is Melissa Elder. I am a concerned community member and a youth advocate. I grew up in a single family home. My mother only had a 6th grade education, but she did the best that she could with what she knew how to do and always impressed upon us the importance of school so that we could have a better life. growing up, my siblings and I didn't really know what that meant, having a better life, but thankfully a mentor found me and helped me see an alternative future for myself. Her name was Susie, and she was someone that really inspired me and gave me the support I needed for questions with school, with future, and just general life support. And to this day, I still value the guidance she gave and definitely wouldn't be where I am today without her and other mentors in my life. It's so important, and I say all of this to say that having mentors and role models from the community is important to the success of students, not only while they're in school, but out of school and in life in general. When I hear that the Indian Education Centers are not allowed on campus because you decided to classify them as a visitor, it just feels like a way to shut out community members away from their students and opportunities for mentorships to develop. As part of the board policy, it is to accept responsibility and accountability for implementing a vision which includes supporting a broad-based curriculum that promotes achievement for all. So if it is the intent of the school district that all children succeed, it's important to recognize that Indian children of school age have equal and equitable access to all programs. And they don't have equal or equitable access if they're getting pushed out of school at higher rates through suspension, expulsion, getting kicked out, or being pushed out of school. Some people say dropping out of school. So they're not having this equal access to future if they're not succeeding at the same rate as their peers due to the ineffectiveness of the current programming. So since the board policy states that the governing board realizes that school alone cannot meet children's complex individual needs, the board shall participate in collaborative relationships that responds to the needs of children and families. So with this in mind, I ask you to please consider Indian Education Centers as a crucial and effective partner in school and their necessity of being on campus. Thank you.
Good evening, board, superintendent. Natung Amy Admarika, no Washnai, no Huampoish, no Kwam Joseph Morales, Della Kolb, and Marcela Ramos. You know me as the director of the Rincon Youth Storytellers and a 25-year staff member and alumna of the Rincon Indian Education Center. How you may not know me is as a survivor. Like my ancestors before me, our students are survivors too. We are healing from 3 genocides and now devastating impacts from the pandemic. To survive these genocides, we had to employ many survival strategies. One of these strategies is taking care of one another. When our children do not have access to every resource available, including their mentors from the Indian Education Centers and community members, they are experiencing a reduction in protective factors, which is key to their being able to participate in their education and see themselves as capable learners. The CDE recognizes this survival strategy in their acknowledgement that to have a successful school-wide program, the district needs to identify and develop an integrated network of services that incorporate strategies to meet the unique and specific needs of our American Indian students, and that the plan requires that participation of all staff, family, and community members. We have been told that 14 of our Native American district-wide students have already been suspended for acts of violence against one another. These behaviors have real consequences. Recent data suggests that suicide is the #2 cause of death for Native Americans, and the #1 cause is violence. We are asking you to recognize that we are essential in this network of services by permitting our centers to return to our on-campus programming, which includes clubs, classes, and tutoring, effective immediately upon verification of vaccination. Other districts across the county have already recognized the importance of having supporting organizations return to campus while they are experiencing a shortage of staff, and recognizing the importance of having more, not less, support for their students. Our staff and other centers are certificated restorative practice, substance and suicide abuse prevention, mental health aid, and Native wellness youth educators. We are requesting the district to recognize that the benefits from our collective expertise at supporting our students' mental health, outweighs the risk of transmitting COVID. As the district has acknowledged, cases are continuing to decrease and our students are insulated by adults wearing masks and being vaccinated. If center staff follow these protocols, school will continue to be a safe place for all students and the district will benefit from our collective expertise in these mental health areas. Please help us help our children thrive and not just survive anymore. Thank you.
Hi, good evening, Superintendent and members of the board. So I'm here tonight to really echo what a few others have said in the beginning, Ms. Shannon, Melissa, Amy, and Anthony. I come here as a community advocate, a youth organizer, and as someone who has really struggled with mental health growing up. My mom struggled with a lot of depression, and in that really affected me. And because I was an only child, I came from first-generation refugee family, I didn't really have people I could look to as mentors. And for many, many years, I struggled so much in finding community. I struggled with my identity. I struggled to belong. And that really affected me for my middle school, my high school, and my elementary years. But what did change was I found mentors in my life. My aunt was someone who repeatedly allowed me to grow into myself because she said, you know what, if there's an issue, I want you to work on it. I don't want you to shy away from it. I want you to look into it. I want you to dive into it. I want you to work on it and improve. And I had other members in my family who were my cousins who I could rely on to support. These were the mentors in my life who changed who I was, because I don't know where I would be if I did not have these mentors in my life. And so when I look at the LCAP statistics that only 34% of Native American students are ready for high school, that is astounding. That is astounding how low that is. And as an educator, as someone who is willing and wanting to help all of our youth prosper and to thrive, we should be looking at that and seeing, why is that happening? There is so many complex issues that are at play, and the least that we can do is to have mentors in their life and to help support them. And so that's why I'm asking to have the American Indian Resource Center be an authorized partner, because when you have mentors, you have healing, you have community. That is what the youth need. Thank you.
Okay, good evening again. I am here this evening for this speech as a representative of the VCP USD Title VI Committee. It's changed over the years, so Title VI Committee and an advisory committee of children residing on Indian land regarding the impact aid funds awarded to this district. The Valley Center Palma Unified School District currently has the second largest number of students living on land in the entire state of California. The significant number of students on Indian land contributes greatly to the over $1.5 million impact aid dollars awarded to this district. The district relies on the collection of the green forms to ensure we receive the funding. By the district's own admission, these forms have been increasingly more challenging to collect each year. But our tribal education centers have actively assisted in spreading the word on the importance of the forms and encouraged our tribal families to complete and submit their children's forms to their school. In the process, many parents, grandparents, and families have asked the question, when the district receives the funds, how much do they use to help our Native American students? The answer is none, zero. While our committee have brought our concerns and outlined the fact that no impact aid funds are earmarked for Native American students to the Title VI Committee, the Special Projects Coordinator, to the Superintendent, and to this board, our concerns about allocation of impact aid dollars have been completely ignored. The actions or lack thereof is interpreted as indifferent at best, hostile at worst towards our Native American students. The district wonders why Native families have a hard time trusting the district. The blanket response is that the funding helps all students by paying teachers and classified employee wages. But this is an unsatisfactory answer, as it does nothing to address the very real concerns that Native American communities have raised over and over again. If I must repeat them here, then clearly we haven't been listened to. I'm sure several of you are tired of hearing the same issues brought again and again, but trust me when I say our Native American communities are also exhausted. Generations of our families are exhausted. We are exhausted, but we are also relentless. We'll keep coming back. We'll keep drawing attention to the inequities and injustice until they were adequately addressed in a true collaborative spirit. Thank you.
Miu Yupan, hello again. I'm gonna wing it. So we're here to talk about the Indian policies and procedures. The Indian policies and procedures are meant to provide Native families an opportunity to have input in not just the Indian policies and procedures document, but also the general education programs and activities. And so first of all, I'd like to address this document. I know that it's something that has to accompany the impact aid application, and it is handed down by the federal government. And we are in contact with the federal government to discuss just everything that's wrong with these policies, because they feel meaningless, right? It has a lot of words in it, but they're not upheld, right? Words like the Indian children should have equal access to all the programs as their non-Native peers. But we think that this language needs to be changed to say equitable access, right? We should be getting what we need. The federal government has already acknowledged that we have unique and specific needs. And so our education should not look like the education of all our non-Native peers. Does that make sense? I hope to everyone. And so we are asking that these Indian policies and procedures that say they can be modified at any time during the school year be modified to say that we deserve equitable access to the programs. We also would like to note that the language for consult with local tribal officials and parents of Indian children, it's often said to us that only, say, a parent of an Indian child can be involved in X process at the district. But as I mentioned before, it's the way of our community to look out for one another. And even though my children have aged out of the system, they both graduated from here, I still have children in the district. They are my nephews and nieces and my little cousins. And so we would like to see that language to include parents and family members and community members. We are all engaged in the education of our children. And so we'd like to see that changed. Also, we have, as Ms. Shanna alluded to, we understand that the federal government has given the district the permission to do whatever they want with the funds. We know they're general funds, but what we've been telling you is that our children are in need of support. They have the lowest scores. They're in the red on all the dashboards, right? And we do have children, I want to acknowledge, who are doing well. And we're so grateful those children have the access, the support, the family, right? But we're here representing those children who don't have that, who are unfortunately need us to be their voice. And so when we ask you to allocate, maybe move some money around, we want you to look at that $1.5 million approximately. And when we ask you for $500,000 to supplement our Title VI aid program, we don't feel that $500,000 is a lot of money when your budget is 50 million. And we know also that COVID money's coming through, right? So when we're asking for 500,000 to support our Title VI aides to be full-time with benefits, we're hoping that that will also help our students academically and emotionally. And so we just really want you, instead of saying no, just blanket no's and and passing the same budget every year. I asked how long this budget's been passed, and I was not afforded an answer because the person I asked did not know. And I think this budget's being passed for 10, maybe 20 years, maybe since the beginning. It's always been used on teacher salaries. And again, we understand that teacher salaries are important, our teachers are important, but we also see the data that our students aren't learning. Our students aren't learning for some reason that we need to figure out together. And we need to solve the problem together. And we are asking for this $500,000 for you to actively look at what it could be. Sit down, minus the 500 from the $1.5 million and say, what could this look like? How can we help these Indian children? The reason we have to fill out those forms is because our land was taken from us in the beginning. And now our children need support in exchange for those lands. And we're obviously sincere when we ask you. We have children dying on the reservation. And we don't want them to die anymore. We want our next generation to live past a median age of 45. So that is why this is very important to us. So I, again, ask you to reassess the program, because right now the Impact Aid program is just salaries for teachers. And we want you to look at what it could mean for us, what it could mean for your school, if you would please allocate the $500,000 towards full-time aides. I also want to speak to what Shanna said, the return. We know that you can get your money without the return of those forms, or the district can get the money without the return of those forms. There's some sort of loophole, obviously, because we know that our 500 Native families do not return 500 forms. And it would be a really good faith effort if we could tell our communities that you are listening to us, that you are going to actively research what it could look like to spend that $500,000 out of the Impact Aid dollars on our communities. Because like Shanna said, it's getting harder and harder to justify why we keep doing this work that we're doing, and why we keep trying so hard to bridge the home and school relationship. We feel that you are deliberately distancing yourself from us. When I say we, I should probably say me. When I say we, I speak for our communities because I know what I do impacts my community. But we have been intentionally written out of the LCAP. We were written in for the last several years as collaborators in our children's education, and that is not acceptable to us. I believe you all know how important our education centers are to our young people, especially President Adams. We would like you to consider also writing us back into the LCAP as collaborators in our children's education. And I know I'm running out of time. Again, these Indian policies and procedures that are reminiscent of the 1850s Indian policies that considered us the Indian problem, that's how this makes us feel, like an Indian problem. And we just want to be included and feel that inclusion from our school. But it says they can be modified if necessary. So this is what I'm speaking to, modifying these policies. Since they exist, we might as well make them meaningful. It also states in here that the Parent Advisory Committee, Title VI, will meet 6 times a year. We feel that we need to meet more times a year. We're unpacking 500 years of our people's trauma. And you are in a position to help us heal our students. And we cannot do that in a 1-hour meeting a month. And I think when we ask for special meetings, those requests should be honored and not try to have us not have a meeting or sidetrack or ambush our meetings with other things. Again, you can see that we are sincere in our requests. And I'm sure there's a lot of other things in here that I have written Ms. Maria about. But I guess those are the main points that I wanted to make regarding the impact aid. Also, does someone else want to let me use their time? Mr. Anthony's letting me use his time. The impact aid survey that's sent out to parents, it is not indigenous to our parents. We have requested many times, many years that our survey to our Indian families be indigenized. Title VI says that we should have a culturally appropriate programming in our school district, and our questions to our families should reflect that. So Title VI gives examples of what the dollars and how the funding should look and programming should look. So our surveys to our Indigenous families should ask them if they are having culturally responsive or culturally responsive practices being taught at their school. There's a whole list here. So it should have questions like, does your school use instruction in Native American languages? Does the school instruction stress traditional cultural characteristics with adult-child interactions? Does your school use a curriculum that's based on traditional culture and include California history, right? So these things, so we can get a real accurate picture of what our Indian families are feeling about their education, instead of the sterile survey that's reminiscent of all the tests, right, that we take that research says are not, that people of color have a hard time with these tests because they're not from our perspective or point of view. And that's how I feel like these surveys are. The survey needs to change to be reflective of our Native families. So that's how I feel about that. And also the 20 surveys out of 522 surveys that were mailed to Native families, the highest, I'm looking here, but there were 16 answers to all the answers, but it says they received 20 surveys. The school received 20 surveys. And that should tell you something about how our community is feeling, that the district only receives 20 returned surveys. We need to look at the climate and how the relationship between our Indian families and our school, and having a survey that connects to them and says, I see you, is really going to help see these numbers increase every year. And then the tribal reps input document that you received, I found it in the agenda. It says that their input, our tribal reps input on the overall district program is here, but it has 2 items. It says, increase the number of meetings and data on graduation cohort dropout rate. That out of all our meetings and all that time together and all the 20 people in the room, that those are the 2 things that we said our input was, and that is inaccurate. We have the minutes from the year before. The minutes from the year before in this column with the yellow, that's our input. There's over 30 things that we have been asking for year after year in regards to our education program and how we might see our Native people in it. This is unfair representation, that we only asked for 2 things. And that is representative and a reflection of what our meetings look like during Title VI as well. We have to argue that our minutes are not reflective of what we actually said and did in our meetings. And as far as input on the education program, Title VI being one of those programs, we would like that to change. We would like us to be fairly represented in the district. Thank you. Thank you.